Hello and welcome to this HRD Connect podcast. I'm delighted to introduce Andrew Drake, the Consulting and Proposition Director from JLT. Welcome, Andrew.
Good morning.
So, what does employee value proposition mean?
The short answer is probably it means different things to different people. But I think if I was to summarise, some of the conversations that we've been having with our clients around what an EVP could be, that's probably a better answer to that. So I guess the summary of it is that EVP, the employee value proposition, is everything that you as an employer brings to the party for the employee. What's the real value that you bring to them as working for your business? What I hear a lot is that companies are striving to recruit and keep hold of the best talent out there, and it's more just paying people isn't enough anymore. It used to be that a salary was the key part, and if you paid people well and they felt they were valued in that respect, then they would stay where they are. But actually, there's a lot more now that people expect out of working for their employer. And some examples of that might be things like the training and development that a company offers, particularly in some sectors like legal, the training and professional development is big for them. Working environment is becoming increasingly important. Can I work from home? Have we got bean bags? Have we got a decent coffee machine and that type of thing? Fruit in the office, all of that good stuff. The social side of it, we typically, I think, like to enjoy working with the people that we do. We're seeing a lot actually on now the equality and diversity policy of a company and how that plays out in an EVP. So companies like to feel that they're working for a business that has a good and robust equality and diversity policy, and it kind of links into their corporate social responsibility too. So more and more people, I believe, particularly perhaps more the millennial generation, like to feel they're working for a company that's actually doing something worthwhile, if you like, and giving something back. Again, that links probably into things like charity days and companies doing that type of thing. So, and of course, right down to the basic stuff is, do I like my manager, which is a big thing. And I think if you wrap all of that up together, we ask a lot of our people, and of course we pay them for asking a lot, but I think that a lot of people now are looking for more from their company, more value from their employer than simply just, can you pay me a salary, probably pay into my pension and give me some life assurance and healthcare and some other benefits. There's actually more than that, and it's probably the stuff that's harder to quantify that you would put into an EVP.
And is it different to total reward?
I'd say it probably is. In fact, no, I'd say it definitely is. I think total reward has been around for a long time, certainly as long as I can remember. I mean, I came into the kind of online benefits, flexible benefits arena 9 years ago now, and total reward has been around for that amount of time, and largely people are still, throwing around some pie charts and some numbers in it and putting values against things like life assurance and pension contributions, salary, bonus, commissions, car allowances, that type of thing. But I think this moves on a considerable level from that. It's a lot of those intangibles that I think you would struggle as an employer to A, put a number against it, a hard number, and B, to then display in what has typically been a total reward methodology. So yes, it feels different. Total reward's probably part of the EVP. They're not mutually exclusive. So I tripped over my words there, but they're not mutually exclusive. But I definitely think one probably forms part of the other.
So where you've seen a company get it right, what have they done?
So a lot of companies, I should probably start by answering that by saying a lot of companies are still very much in the early stages of an EVP or trying to draw one up. I think it's a topic that's been on people's agenda for a couple of years now, and some companies have made great strides, and some companies are still trying to kind of get to grips with it and understand what it is, but let alone trying to actually deliver something and get it into practice, if you like, into their business. Where I've seen companies get it right, I think they've really set out with very clear objectives from the start. So, when I say objectives, perhaps that's the wrong word. More about what is their USP. So rather than trying to come up with some ideas that add to the value of it, almost like why would a company work? Why would an employee work for us as a company over somebody else? But also why, if we could answer those questions in 12 months, what would we want the answers to be? And sometimes are very different, and I think a lot of companies where I've seen it done quite successfully is where they started to have that very clear of a very clear vision of where we are now and where we want to be in, let's say, 12 months' time or 2 years' time, and they are very deliberately and consciously mapping everything that they do against that starting point, and everything they do, they bring it back to that. So it's almost challenging everything they do as an idea from an HR perspective, a people perspective, to say, hang on a minute, let's just go back to our basic principles here. We want to get from A to B. This is what A and B look like. Does it tick that off? Yes, it does. Great, we'll do it. No, it doesn't. Let's rethink it. I think the other angle of that, where I've seen it done very well, is the personal aspect. I think more and more, particularly in a world where of big data and people just being a number and a statistic, as we probably increasingly feel like, I think people are getting sick of just being a number or a statistic or just a data set, and actually where there's some individual angle on this or some a personal touch, then it's great. And we all talk about the generations and 5 generations, 6, 7, whatever it might be, and I'm very typical mid-30s male and married with a child, so I'm very easy to pigeonhole, but I have a very different lifestyle and needs and requirements and a definition of value to another 35-year-old male. So why would you treat us both the same? And actually where I've seen success is where this values try to be as much as possible brought alive to the individual, not just as a big group.
And what about when they've got it wrong?
I haven't seen too many go wrong, actually, I have to say, but largely because I think it's in its infancy, so I think there's not too many opportunities for it to go wrong. But I think what I'd probably say is a lot of the stuff we've just said about where it gets done right, is almost the opposite is true for where perhaps it goes wrong. I think with anything now, it's very difficult to just dive into something and, you sit in a room and go, we need an EVP, let's create one and just implement it. And then you sit there in 6 months and go, well, that didn't really work. I think spending the time up front to go, why are we even doing this, and what do we want this business to look like, and what type of person do we want to recruit? And perhaps the question is, what do we want our employees to say about us to potential employees of ours? That's a good question. If you're one of your people was in the pub having a beer with a friend, and they said, I saw an advert for your company the other day for a job. What do you think? Should I apply for it? What would you want the answer to that question to be? And then maybe that's the basis, and maybe that's where some of this goes wrong sometimes, is people don't think about it like that. They just go, everyone's doing EVP, let's just get on with it and roll out an EVP, and unsurprisingly then it can just not really go anywhere and not be very successful.
And that leads us nicely into the final question. Is there a blueprint for others to follow?
I don't think there's a blueprint. I think there's lessons that can be learned from others that will help. I think every company is unique. I do believe that, even JLT, we're in an industry where we have competitors who, on the face of it, they look very similar, but they are very different businesses. And I think every single employer has its uniqueness. So there's not a blueprint, but I definitely think there's some structure and some lessons that we could all learn from other companies. And actually, it's not about learning from other companies just like ours. It's about learning from very different types of companies. So, JLT might sit in the sector that it does, but we could learn a thing or two from companies in the in the media industry, for example, in the legal sector, in whatever sector it might be. There's always things that we can learn from some of those sectors that would make us do things better. And so I think, whilst there's no blueprint to follow, and I say learn the lessons, I would always encourage people to learn the lessons from as broad a range of others as they can, and not just automatically default to, I'm a media business, let's learn the lessons of every other media business, because that's only going to give you a limited exposure to how you can make things really good.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Andrew.
Pleasure.
JLT, along with a multitude of other thought leaders, will be joining us at the HRD Summit. To see more content from them, please visit our website at hrdsummit.com.